Welcome to IT in Motion, where we make autonomous IT entertaining and informative. My name is Sun.
And I'm Josh, and we're your hosts. Today, we're going to be talking to Chris Lee, founder of SparkPlug Agility. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks so much for having me on, guys. Appreciate it. Oh, look at that. Such a wonderful studio audience. Listen to that. How did you get all these people out to come and listen to us?
Well, they knew that you were going to be here, and it wasn't hard.
It wasn't. They knew your name.
It's hopefully not too much.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. That's how it works.
Put those sliders toward the end on that one. All right.
So, Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself. Brief introduction.
It's fun, being here and getting to see it. Here we are, in Reston. It's great. I actually grew up right down the street from here. Being able to interact with all the different companies and organizations in this area, you guys get it. You go in a place like, oh, where are you from? This is a very transient area. So when I would go and work with folks, it'd be like, hey, where are you from? I'm like, from here. They're like, what do you mean from here? I'm like, no. From here.
I grew up here.
Like born in downtown DC, lived in PG County, moved like literally right down the street. My parents are still with us. They are literally like 5 minutes down the road.
Mr. DMV.
Like 19, DMV in that order. So like, there we go. So when people say you from here, it's like, no, I'm from here. It's like the traffic, I get it. I get it. The challenges in the organizations, I get it. So yeah, it's fun. Currently out in Loudoun County, but it's wonderful to be able to have like, just such a spectrum of experience in the area. It's wonderful to be here. So again, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
And we actually want to get to know you a little bit better and get our audience to get more familiar with you. And we figured we'd do that via game.
Love games.
All right. Why don't we go ahead and start with the first question? What is the most expensive watch ever sold at an auction?
That is an awful question. No, there's this Grand Complication pocket watch that came out years ago, and that's the thing at auction. Philips had a really big one a little while ago, and so did Sotheby's. I forget what it went for, but it was actually in 9 figures from what I remember.
Wow.
Like it was like a 200 complication type thing. Did you guys remember it? I don't remember it.
So I went and looked it up. At least according to Wikipedia, it was the Philippe Grandmaster Chime. It went for $32 million. But I know that there are some higher priced watches out there.
There are, but it's like the Patek that's out there. It's cool because some of these organizations, they build some of the best watches out there. Vacheron Constantin, wonderful organization. Audemars Piguet, wonderful. Patek Philippe, wonderful. So like if any of the watch fans watching, how's it going, everyone? But no, when you see these auction houses move stuff, it's like, whoa, there's some cool stuff, some really cool stuff out there.
All right. So you know more about this than me, so you may have to correct the answers on this.
No, it's fine.
What is the most complications ever put on a watch, analog watch?
I don't know I want to say, did someone do all of them? There's one that did like equation of time, moon phase, chrono, flyback, chime. There's some that have gone like way overboard with it. Like here's like a couple hundred. It's really crazy. What did you see?
So the number I saw was 57 complications.
It's crazy. Like I saw one where it's like, and it was a huge pocket watch and you'll see all these different things. Like I say, VC does some really cool stuff.
So a lot of people don't know what a watch complication is. So give us a quick explanation.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. So like, sometimes when people buy a watch, it's like, hey, I just wanted to tell time.
Right.
And like nowadays, what do people do? They just have it on their phone.
Right.
The good friend of mine was like that. Recently just took him, we were at an event that we put on out in Las Vegas. And I was like, okay, let's get you a watch. And he was like, wow, I can just look down at my wrist and tell the time. Like, yeah, that's kind of what they've been doing for a couple of years. Like you'll see people where it's like, what complications do you want? And I try to help people, who are looking to buy a watch. And it's like, well, do you need to know what day it is? They're like, what do you mean? I'm like the date. Some people are like, oh, really? Well, that's the complication. Sometimes you'll just see seconds, minutes, hours. And it's like, would you like a date on there? Okay. Some people will want, like, oh, you've seen stopwatches? That's a chronograph.
Right.
So some people would ask that. So sometimes you get date and chronograph. Sometimes you can tell multiple time zones. This will be either in a dual time watch or what's called a GMT. So when you see the red and blue watches, everyone's like, oh, I want that. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So it's just those kind of things where it's like, think of it like options on a car. Does it have this and this and this and this? And there's only so much real estate to work with. So when you see something, 40 complications, 50 complications, normally that's a pretty honking like Flavor Flav pocket watch.
Right.
But no, there's some really cool stuff out there. So if they can pull it off, it's pretty impressive.
Right. And if it's fully analog, right, you're looking at these very precise machines, right? 3,300 parts and crazy stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you'll see mechanical watches, you will see quartz watches, a whole bunch of different types of movements out there. It's a deep, dark hole. And if you want to waste a lot of time and a lot of money on something,
Next question we got for you is name 3 cars that are named after cats.
Cats. Well, there's the cheetah. That's cool. There's actually one locally. There's a cheetah, which is cool. The Mercury cougar. Boy, that's a fun one. I get to see that one. Oh, there's that green one I saw once up in PA. It was really, really good. Man, that was really, really cool car. No, because like sit back and the cheetah that's local. If by the way, if you bang around Northern Virginia area, there's a lot of cool car meets out there. So definitely check some of that out. There's a dark blue cheetah that runs around here. It was supposed to like kind of go along with like some of the cobras, and of the time you sit really, really far back. That's really cool. So the cougar, the cheetah. Let's see which other ones I know that are out there. My God, I mean, you could say panther, but that didn't count because that was the working name. No, it's another one.
Well, there's always the brand you could use too.
The car or the brand?
Either one.
I don't know. What else do you got back? I mean, if you did birds is easy. What else you got on there?
So we talked about Jaguar, Ford Puma.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Jaguar. Okay. Sorry. I was just thinking cars. Yeah, Jaguar. Hey, I got my friends, they really love their Jaguars.
Do they?
Well, you know, if you got the cardboard you can put down in case. No, I'm just kidding. No, we grew up around some really good stuff. One of my friends, a friend of mine has a really nice E-Type he gets to drive. And it's amazing what some of these things are some of the most beautiful things you'll ever see. And I'm amazed that you can drive around on tires like that skinny.
Yeah.
But they look great. They look great. It's like the Austin Powers, Yeah, baby.
Yeah. Yeah, that car looked cool.
That's a cool car. Cool car.
And what's the longest video game to have been developed? Do you know?
You mean like how long they were working on it?
Yeah.
I think they're still working on some things. I mean, there's stuff that never made it out. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so the longest one was Metroid Dread. It took 16 years.
Dread was 16 years.
Yeah, although there's a big gap in the middle.
I was going to say there's a gap in there. Like that's what I was saying. It's a continuous kind of thing because like No Man's Sky had a really rough release, and there's a lot of people upset about that because the promise of AI generated worlds and this and there's like people are like super flop, and then they went under the hood and they kept working on it and they brought people back. But then you get into like the World of Warcraft. Like I was in open beta, they were continuing to work on that. So that's why I was like,
it is an ongoing.
So Dread's tight. Do you guys play Dread?
I don't,
dude. If you want to relax, don't get that game. No, it's old school. It's like it will jump on you and you're like trying to get through something. You're like, and you go into an area and then there are these crazy bots that are going to like run you down and like the music gets all intense. And like, I'm just trying to chill, man. Like, no, this is my buddy's kid loves it. So yeah, it's a great game. It's on Switch. Great game.
So I think the longest one that was in continuous development and got released was Duke Nukem Forever.
Oh my goodness.
Legendarily bad.
My friend has the receipt from like EA or whatever. Like 10 years later, tweets it out. 10 years later, 15 or whatever.
Yeah, it was 15 years.
15 years. Just
notoriously bad development cycle. Like it was a joke meme for years.
I feel bad because like I got a lot of friends in that industry. It's like you do the best you can, and between hardware issues, between changing in producers, funding, market. I mean, it's just like a lot of the stuff that we deal with here. It's like there's someone out there that's going to want to consume this, and if we have trouble getting that value in the hands of somebody. I mean, think about the people you all talk to. It's like, we have a 12-month release cycle. It's like, how many people can come and eat your lunch in 12 months? A lot. Yeah. So,
absolutely.
Long time on that one. Yeah, shout out Duke Nukem.
Yeah, and so Duke Nukem Forever, right? Like, it was this long development cycle. And like you said, it wasn't the fault of the engineers. It wasn't the fault of the artists. It was business situation, right? There was an acquisition, there was funding, it changed creative directors.
Absolutely.
And so that kind of takes us into one of the things that's going on now that's not the fault of people experiencing it, which is layoffs.
Roger that.
Why layoffs happen in general, because there's people listening to this now, I'm sure, that are affected, right? So they want to know why it happened, and also like why now? Why are these layoffs happening right now?
Well, I wish I had an answer to all of that of why it was, but because it varies between the organization. But part of it goes to, think about one of the things I just talked about this last night is you think about the events of the last 3 years or so. The world's a little bit different now.
Yeah, certainly.
There are times when an organization has to take a look at itself and say, okay, what's the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do? You're always hiring. You're always getting rid of stuff. People are greening the staff, making decisions, stuff like that. And organizations that don't have kind of like that zoomed out view of it of like, okay, and this is just for me personally. The moment you are heading up an organization, anybody who's a part of that, everybody there, that is your responsibility to make sure not just they are, but their families are fed and taken care of. Their livelihood. And they are cared for. That's your number one priority. And not every organization is going to take that view. This is my view. Right. Because it's like your dinner is my responsibility now if you work for me. That's just how it is. That's how I operate. It's the world, it's business. You got to figure things out. So when it comes to the events of the last 3 years, how heartless would it be to let somebody go right when everything locks down? Some organizations would be like, we simply can't do that. Other organizations had to make the hard call, and they did it like right away. One organization that we work with, I have a very good relationship with their founder and CEO. They had to make a decision to let people go the day we locked down. And you know what? It was the right decision for the rest of the staff. And that's a hard call.
Yeah.
And somebody somewhere has to make a hard call. But why does it happen? People kind of put that stuff on pause for a couple of years. So just like there's a built up of market demand.
Sure.
If you haven't had a layoff in about 3 years, markets adjust.
You're going to need to shed a little.
So that's part of it. That's one reason. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously the macroeconomic factors, right? Interest rates are rising to fight inflation.
Sure.
So that makes money more expensive. So companies that are kind of used to the very inexpensive financing, that's hitting them.
That's it.
You know, there's product lines that overhired, you know, so much.
Yeah, I think there was a level of bloat that definitely occurred over the pandemic.
But it might have been responding to market.
Right.
Think about how many people wanted to get in line for a Peloton bike.
Yeah. Or how hard it was to buy a webcam for about
how hard it was to
9-10
buy
months.
anything with a chip or anything, video cards.
Right.
Yeah.
Markets adjust.
Right.
So you could have hired to meet demand, then you didn't. That's one thing. Another thing I was talking to a friend of mine is that put in the reality of it, there's a lot of organizations that have people now working from home.
Yeah.
Call it what it is. I mean, we're in this wonderful space right now. Got a seat or two open. There's a few seats that are open. But it's like, okay, zooming out a little bit, you've got to consider this has to be paid for by somebody. If I'm striking the check on a lease that I signed for 5-7 years, calling it what it is, it's like, okay, what are we going to do with this? Do I want to sublease it? Do I want to do that? But there are expenses to things that people have to consider. So it's like, this is a tough spot to be in. Imagine if you thought you were going to land this huge contract, big teaming agreement. We're going to go here. There's like 5 years and like 5 years for extension. We're going to need to staff up. It's going to be a team of 300. And you sign a lease down the street, thousands of square feet. By the way, you're all remote now. Ouch. You know, I mean, these are dollars and cents kind of things. And, you know, you guess wrong.
Yeah.
But if you're hiring people to stay at home, they can live for anywhere. And there's no right answer to this question, by the way. So if anyone's like, oh, wait a minute, no. I talk with friends about this. There are organizations out there that pay people the same regardless of where you live.
Yeah.
There are other organizations that make changes based on your cost of living.
right.
Yeah.
Like I know people who be like, I want the DC area salary, but I'm going to move to a much easier cost of living several hours away. And it's like, okay, well, we're going to make a salary adjustment. Well, that's not going to work with my lifestyle. Pause. You're in your house.
Exactly.
And it's like, I had to explain to some family members about what it's like in this area, back to like where we are from, just to get to work. Think about people on that toll road, on the hot lanes, on a greenway, parking, dry cleaning, just that, gas.
Yeah. It's
Totally.
hundreds a month.
It costs money, 5 figures for some people, just to go to work. That's even if you make your leftovers and bring it in. Then you're going out to lunch. It's like there's a cost to this kind of stuff. So it's like you need to pay people where that is. Looking at it both sides, because I'm always going to remember my time in the pens. It's like, hey, you know, I need money so I can go to work. And then on the employer side, it's like, okay, well, you don't have to do that now. So maybe this is, again, why it's no right answer. So it's like some of these are dollars and cents. Some of it's strategic. But you had this glut of people entering the workforce. People are moving and changing and finding better fits for them. But really, when you zoom out at it, what do a lot of folks do? What do? We look into a box. We push buttons. We talk to people.
Yeah.
Zoom out. Is that part of your job? Is that part of your job?
Sure.
It's part of everyone's job.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like, okay, if like an alien landed from space and looked down, you're looking into a box, you're pushing buttons. Okay. It's kind of, you know, it's like, whoa, when you think about it that way. So if you have such a high payroll on stuff, and I can hire somebody else to save a little bit of money here to maybe offset the lease. This is where it's like, it's not any one person. So it's from a system standpoint,
Right.
there are a lot of factors. You mentioned interest rates, but what a lot of people have to realize is it's a business and some of the decisions are well thought. And unfortunately, some of the decisions are not.
Let me ask you this. Is it like, you know, when one large tech company decides to lay off, does that allow other tech companies to kind of follow suit as well if they feel like it's time for them to shed some skin?
I don't know about that. I mean, you know, people are like, oh, here in California, I got a lot of partners and friends in California. So it's like, oh, there's this and big tech and this, but this is the time, like from a timing standpoint, remember we're saying, hey, it's been a bunch of years, you know, we can't lay anybody off. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world. What do we just do? We just turn the new year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's time. Okay,
Yeah.
it's time. I have friends that were charged with the back to the office initiative inside some of these places, and the resistance they received from some was significant.
Mm-hmm.
The acceptance from some was significant. And you know what the answer is? You're not going to make everybody happy. And so it's like, hey, we're trying to come back in, this, that, the other. Again, we want collisions at work. And there's like science that says it's good, science that says it's not.
Right.
Where it's like, if you're in the office, but you can vibe when you can see someone, it's real, it's human.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan on like human connection. But like, if I can see you through a camera, that's still human connection. But how many meetings have you been to when it's just block, no, you don't see them.
It's
you
0
see
D.
initials, you see a name,
That's
you see
right.
a baby picture from 10 years ago, a different haircut and 15 pounds. It's not human. You're just an email address. So it's like, once things can become more human, it's like, instead of putting it there, they're like, oh, we need to come in. So yeah, there's some adjustments there. I don't think there's a timing where it's like, if we're going to lay it off, I mean, frankly, strategically, if there's a bunch of layoffs, you know what I'm looking to do?
Higher.
There you go. Yeah, I'm looking higher. But also,
smart.
but there's going to be a domino with that. If I know top talent's going to hit, and I got some dead weight, they got to go for you to come in.
Yeah.
Or I got to get more work.
Yep.
And so it's, again, there's a lot of dominoes with this.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably some cases, right, where you're worried about losing top talent to a competitor and the other company, right, they're doing a layoff. So you're like, all right, well, this is probably a safer time. There's probably a certain amount of that
Maybe.
calculus that
Sure.
goes on, right? You know,
Maybe.
people are looking at a lot of factors. They make these decisions.
If I'm in the headline, if I'm in the second or after the second or third comma, maybe it's not as bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not for
So-
nothing.
So tell us about the feelings of getting laid off, like especially for the first time or not first time. I mean, what is that? How do those people feel right now? And
Oh,
Not good.
probably not good, but some of them might be relieved. So from a layoff standpoint, and you want like the short version, right? First job I got laid off from right after a year, right before Thanksgiving. Got pulled into a room. Everyone thought they were going on a new project. Legal walked in, opened the pad, read something. People are screaming, yelling. They had big dudes. I mean, like the
Bouncers.
bouncer type, like guys that are a foot taller than me.
Jeez.
We were basically thrown out of the building by the scruff of our neck with the cardboard box. People were throwing things at the building. Hundreds of people right before Thanksgiving. I was like, is this the world that we're in now? Now, keeping this in mind, the contracts we were working on in this is like .com, .bomb era.
Right.
30-day, 60-day, 90-day type engagements.
Wow.
It's like, that's awful, but there's something to it. I'll bring it back to that. So it's like, if the sales cycle couldn't keep up with it, we couldn't keep the cash flow. So, hey, you got to go. Stinks for the timing. I was worried. I was angry. I was frustrated. I was a little bit scared because it's like, okay, if I was putting energy into this place that I really cared about and they're going to throw me out, it's like, okay, I can tell you it's one of the best things that ever happened. Seriously. Because it's like, okay, this battle hardened me for what the world really was.
Pain helps you grow.
Not even just pain, but just the experience of it. So it's like, okay, what happened? It's like, okay, what are we going to do? So, you go to it was at the VA, you register for unemployment. There's this, I remember going to the meeting like, hi, I'm in IT services. They're like, you're going to be fine. So then found another job, rocking and rolling. They were opening up some stuff down in Tyson's. Cool stuff, payroll system, rocking and rolling. Wonderful organization from out of town. It was opening up a satellite office, hiring top talent, DC area. So we're like, here. Guess what happens? Layoff again, like within a year. And so it's like, wow, second time I was laid off now. It's like, this is no good. The experience couldn't have been different. Leadership there, they were emotional about it. They were talking to people one at a time. We are so sorry. Everyone felt different about it. I said, do you mind if I stay here for a little bit to just print out a couple copies of my resume and make a few phone calls? He said, Chris, you do whatever you want. Night and day from my previous experience.
Sure.
Here. I said, thank you. Hung out for a bit, say goodbye to people. I get in the car on the way home. I'm coming home from Columbia, Maryland. I'm driving, stick and, doing no Bluetooth.
Yeah.
Between coming home from Columbia to my apartment, down, like in Tyson's, I had 4 interviews. What does that mean? What it meant was, regardless of what happened, it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
I was going to be able to find some. So if you're listening to this right now, it's going to be fine. Seriously, it's going to be fine. Once you go out and you look and say, what will I do? I'm looking for work. And we'll get into like the advice and tactics. I got some things I'd like to offer up, but It's like that moment where it's like, if I came home and I got that many interviews, it's like, that means it's going to be fine. And since then, this is, wow, it's like 2001.
Yeah.
I have never left a job not on my own terms since then.
you're battle ready. You were hardened, right?
ready.
You have those experiences, and they actually make you stronger over time. You know how to handle it if it ever happens again, too.
Yep.
How did that change your relationship to the companies you work for, right? You said that first job, you really cared about it, you really pushed hard.
Mhm.
How did that mindset shift? I mean, I just from what I know of you, you're a passionate guy. I think you work hard probably no matter where you work.
Roger that.
So what sort of shifted for you?
As far as like within myself or my relationship with the company, I want to make sure I give you the good one on this.
I guess a little of both, right? What changed inside of you as a result of that? I think you kind of talked about that a little bit, but also like your relationship with your employer, right? I mean, you're the founder of a company, you're a company now, but
Roger that.
haven't been forever, right?
Yeah. Well, really, because what is the organization? It's the people.
Yeah.
And I have a wonderful relationship with a lot of the people who had gone through that with me. Like, I mean, we were just down in Georgetown going out to go see my private lessons teacher. I play trumpet. And so we were going to see my private lessons teacher play. Walking down in Georgetown, one of my friends from that organization was like, dude, sup? Catching up on the side.
Right.
And like, actually, I met my wife at that first company. So we all knew each other.
Oh, wow.
Catching up. Yeah. And like, we had a lunch meeting about a year ago, but it was like, oh, hey. So the bonds with the people that you go through this stuff with is kind of good. The second spot, I don't talk to as many people there, but the memories are really great. It's just part of the story. It's part of the story as you go. And that's why it's like wherever you are, you know, do either of you have pets?
Yeah, I have a cat.
Have you ever heard people say the term forever home? Like when you adopt a pet and all.
Right.
What I tell a lot of people is like, for a lot of folks, at least from a career standpoint, it's just the next gig. It might not be your forever home, and that's okay. Like for me, like I don't know like what's gonna happen with SparkPlug. I don't know. Like people are like, why don't you hire like hundreds of people? Because like I see these buildings and I'm like, yeah, we could, especially with the connections we have and the experience. But I'm like, I'm not into. It doesn't give me as much purpose as some of our other work. So it's like that's not what I want to do.
Right.
And kind of like back to earlier, it's like your responsibility, your dinner. That's my responsibility.
Yeah.
Your safety, your care, that is my responsibility.
Right.
And it's like, I take that extremely seriously. So it's like to put the energy there versus what I'm working right now, that it's just, I'm getting some purpose from some other stuff. So I don't know if it's in the direction of what you're thinking about, but that's the relationships with the people is what I took away from those places.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so really it sounds like the transition you've had in sort of your relationship to work was to focus less on the organization itself and more on the people of the organization, right? That you're kind of focused on working hard as maybe a little bit more around serving the people around you. Is that fair to say?
It's close to it. Cause like the organization, there's some pride with that. Like one organization I was a part of recently, I got so many fond memories of, and we did a lot of really good stuff. And, you know, from an organization standpoint, when I think about it, it's, and I don't want to get into, you know, names and selling it because people are like, oh, no. But you know who you are if you're watching this. And it's like when we were attracted to this organization, this is when I was pulled out of some work one place I was at. They said, hey, here's this really cool problem. I'm like, I've got a great job. They said, no, we are interested in developing the next round of leaders. We anticipate a lot of folks leaving here and starting their own organization. You've been identified as a high potential person, networking, we like you. We've done this multiple times. We want to show you how to do this just to fill in the blind spots.
It's amazing.
And I'm like, I'm interested.
Incredible.
So when we went there, and I was like one of the first organic talents there. Like everybody else had worked each other 15, 20 years. So I'm off the street and like, sup.
Is this Agilix?
You can say it. I'm not going to say it. But it's like, but the people there were just great. You know, there's a couple of rough spots here and there, but it's like to be able to build and develop something and learn. The mentors that pulled me in there, unfortunately, are not with us right now, but I carry an extreme respect, and I still talk about them when I talk with people because they basically gave me and a lot of the people our start. And from there, there's a whole family tree of people who have gone out and done amazing things, all tied to these people, and not even just from Agilex, but from people who had worked with before at different places. And so just to see how far those ripples go when you throw a rock into a pond is cool.
Right.
So like the organization and what we did there, I'm very proud of like a lot of the cool stuff and the relationships we found, the problems we solved. That's good. So there's some pride in the organizations that I've been in.
Okay,
you know,
Makes sense.
Anytime you're catching bad guys, anytime you're putting medicine in someone's, you know, in their purview, anytime you're like relieving someone's pain, mission work.
Yeah.
That feels good. So it's like that's under the flag, but the human element is always the most important thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it a big part of what you're saying is that sort of long-term view, right? Your career isn't 1 year. Your career is many years. And so those ripples, those people you know, those contacts make a difference.
Absolutely. So, you know, obviously talking a whole lot about layoffs. You talked about the tactical and practical. So let's put the scenario out there. You know, let's say you're somebody who got laid off. What do you do now?
What do? You got a couple things to do. The first, it's okay to take some time to just kind of internalize. So if you're watching and you're like, oh, I need to be, it's okay to just like be. Like seriously, like go out, get a piece of pizza, or like go to the park with your kids, or like go on a walk with a friend, a coworker. Take a bit. It's okay. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Then it's okay, what can I do? Because the scary part is that some people have never experienced a layoff. I've seen enough of it where it's like, it's not new to me, but for some of my friends I'm talking to, it's the first time.
Right.
They've been in the game for a long time. And it's like, wow, it's scary. What can you do tactically? Sure. First thing I'm a big fan of, sit and think about these two things. What do you bring to the table? And what do you want to do? Who you are? What are you looking for? The reason I mention this is that when you see people, I get a lot of people come to me, Chris, can you look at my resume? Chris, can you look at my resume? Or look at my resume. I had been giving 95% of the same advice, like to every candidate. So quick plug. If you want to go to the SparkPlug Agility website, a lot of the people in the Agile space are like, how can I make my digital footprint a little bit better, look a little bit more Agile friendly? We put together a bunch of guidance on a blog post. So if you take a look for the Agile friendly resume, Google like SparkPlug or Chris Lee, by the way, it's L-I, 2 letters. You look that up, it'll give some tactical and practical advice, things to think about. But the first thing, how long do people look at a resume? That's about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You don't have a long time.
Very true.
So I'm a big fan of like, who are you? What are you looking for? And it's like, just to be able to answer, what am I bringing to the table? Do that in 2 to 3 sentences, writing it down. What are you looking for? 2 to 3 sentences, writing it down. That's where it can start. Because if you can't answer those 2 questions, why should I talk to you over another candidate?
Yep.
That's where it starts. Thinking about that. Then you can expand from there, thinking about, oh, here are the different spots I've been in. Here are my responsibilities. Here are my accomplishments, my accolades. But it's interesting what you'll see when people will get into this, when they get in through this resume activity of what they'll do. And there's just alphabet soup and all. And in that blog post, I give a lot of like tactical advice. Here's one piece of advice you'll see in there. You know how people like to go to certifications and get all that stuff like there?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great and all. What's the first thing you see on someone's name?
Their certification acronym.
Almost always, right? You go to LinkedIn, what do you see? You see their name and all this. When you look at a resume, what's up at the top? Your name. So this is the advice I would give you. Take all those certifications off the back. Why? You're bigger than your certifications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got place to tell them later. Stand by your name.
I think I'm
Little
going to
things
need
like
to update my LinkedIn immediately after this.
Well, but think about it. You've seen the signature. Have you seen the signature block where people like roll the badge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My signature block is just founder. That's it. People, you got a chance to say it. It's like, and this is part of like, culture in DC area. Like, oh, I got this. That's great. Like, oh, you sat and did a LinkedIn learning, or you sat in a room with Chris for like 2 days. You're bigger than your certifications. So
Right. It's about what you bring to the table.
exactly. So thinking about those, who are you? What do you bring? Like, what are you bringing to the table? What are you looking for? That's a great starting point. And then looking through your resume, because once you've got that, and by the way, one of my mentors said, when you talk, speak clearly, concisely, and not too fast. I'm like, Roger that, sir. You seen those resumes of people who are like 5, 6 pages and they've been in the game for 2 years?
Yep.
Calm down. You want to, it's the balance of, am I showing, it's getting you in the door. So you want to have something there that's interesting, but not too much.
They're the highlights.
When you go through that, exactly. When you go through that activity on here's what my resume is, then you want to think about, okay, what's my digital footprint? This is one thing I tell people. When you go to LinkedIn, this is a lot of people use this now. Some people, I hate LinkedIn. People go there. If I'm going into an interview with somebody,
Certainly.
think about it. Hey, connect, boom, boom, look at the profile. You know anybody does that? Uh-huh. Does that profile line up with your resume? Getting that in order. Let's say you are a part of a project management group, or you're part of a leadership group or a speaking group. Is it reflected there? If I Google you, what am I going to find? It's amazing what can happen. So you're making sure all of that is in order. And it's like, okay, because people are like, can I have different versions of a resume for different jobs? Absolutely. But that base of who you are and what you bring to the table is still going to be in there.
Mm-hmm.
Where have you been? That's still going to be there. So it's like getting that kind of like digital footprint all in order. You can do all that once you've got in mind, what am I looking for? What do I want to do? Because I have a friend of mine who called me and said, I want to apply to this job, just completely different jobs. And I'm like, if I see someone apply to 3 different jobs within my organization, you look desperate.
There's one place I would say maybe it's okay. Actually, when I first applied at ScienceLogic, there were two jobs that sounded like what I wanted to do. And from the outside, I couldn't tell what the difference between the two jobs were. They sounded the same to me. So when I submitted my resume, I emailed
both.
I said, hey, I'm applying to these two jobs because I don't understand what the difference is.
That's fine.
And I think they're both matched, but I trust you to match me better.
That's at least a human connection on that. Sure. I just mean like the volley.
Exactly.
Like I'll do and
throw
like,
it out.
It's showing that you care, right? That's what it comes down to. Like I actually took the time to think about it and say, yeah, these actually sound good, but here's my question.
This is what I'm looking for.
Sure.
Here's who I am, and this is what I'm looking for.
So talk to us about how leveraging your network perhaps can also kind of come into play here. A lot of obviously LinkedIn is a tool that we all use, and some of us have premium, so you can see your network's network. I mean, does that come into play when you're on your job search?
It's part of it. I'm a big fan of, knowing people in the industry. Hey, is there anything going on? Phone calls go a long way. Because like I've heard from a lot of people over the last couple of weeks. Hey, Chris, because I have a lot of students. It's like, hey, Chris, just this. I say, no problem. Because it's like I hear all the time, hey, we got an opening here and an opening here. And I am not a placement staffing. That's not what I do. But it's like I want to connect people, like if there's a good fit. But it's like I just want the people to talk. And if there's no fit, it's not a bad thing. The tough part about leveraging the networks and stuff like that is a lot of noise. Think about how many emails you get every day. Hey, I tried to contact you and I went to voice and it's cold, and it's cold.
Yeah.
When you start copying and pasting and sending messages, here's the thing, folks, people will know.
Yeah.
Because nothing is worse than getting a copy and a paste and you forgot to change something. True story. Got a candidate right now. Got a buddy of mine. He's out there working, wicked smart. He's thinking about a change. Talk to a place, send him a mail. Forgot to change the name.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it was like, and think about now, you're trying to hire and you got a botch like that. Looks bad.
Yeah.
So, and this is another little practical advice for people who are looking as well as people who are hiring. Let's say you're starting to look at some things. This is what I tell everybody. You need to get a clear definition of success of what that position looks like.
Yeah.
What does success look like for me here? No, we want you to work in a high-paced, be versatile. We're looking for a self-starter, high-paced environment. It's like working good under pressure, calm down.
Buzzword central.
But it's how do you know? And I have a workshop I do on this because I tell people, I say, how do you know you've had a good day? How do you know you've had a good week? How do you know you've had a good month?
I measure it based on how much I've laughed.
But then there's that. But when it comes to an employer and an employee, how do I know I've had a good quarter? How do I know I've had a good year? And I tell everyone, do you know what a good day looks like or a good quarter? And if you don't, who could you go ask to figure out what that looks like? Take metrics out of it. None of that. I'm not even going to get into it.
Right.
But it's like, okay, what am I being asked to do? How do I know that I'm winning? Like, I know what is expected of me at work, and I have the tools I need to do the job. If you can't get clarity on those two, folks, that is probably not the job for you. Likewise, if you're an employer and you can't communicate that, you need to think about what you're actually posting up.
Yeah.
There's some tactical and practical.
Yeah. I mean, it can be very common to have these job descriptions that are just kind of nonsense, right?
Absolutely.
They either only talk to people inside the organization, or even inside the organization, people don't really know what the job talks about. And you go read the job description and you're like, is this a line cook, or is it a computer programmer, or is it a pilot? Because it doesn't make sense.
But this is where, for the candidate, when you're out and reading these job descriptions, you have to think about where it comes from. Because again, from being internal, I don't know if y'all been a part of all this stuff.
Sure,
but it's like just getting a job description written, posted, approved can be an absolute slog.
It can
cost so much money. Shouldn't have to, does. But what happens? Copy, paste, change, copy, paste, change. True story. Organization I was a part of was looking to hire somebody. Like, oh, we're trying to hire a project manager. It was this kludge Frankenstein from a bunch of job descriptions. I hadn't seen it. They're like, we're not finding any candidates for this job. We're not getting any hits at all. I go, let me see it. I look at it. And I scanned down and was like, one of the lines on, there's nice to have, must have. Must have was a specific type of degree from one of these three colleges. And I'm like, I'm curious, why does someone at that agency need this right here? They're like, oh, they don't need it. I go, it's right here on must have. Because the more criteria you add, the smaller your funnel gets.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you're copying and pasting and no one really cares about it, and no one's looking at it with that kind of a critical eye, you're reducing the amount of candidates that you can look at.
Sure.
It's
So
the
it's-
ship of Theseus for the job description.
Exactly. So figuring out what that looks like, this is for employers out there. You need to think about that. For you, if those of you out who are laid off and looking for jobs, these are the questions that you need to ask. If you see must-haves and nice-to-haves, that's one thing. And I got another thing on that. I want to throw it back to you, but I got another really good tactical practical for you. Let's say you look at a job description. Looks great. Like it's great. Location, mission, it feels great. You don't exactly meet some of the must-haves. Apply anyway. What are they going to say? No, I'm sorry. You think they don't want to hear from you? Apply anyway. People are like, what's the worst they can say? No. Okay.
Yeah.
Throw your hat in the ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so I've talked to our HR department about that, and that's one of the pieces of research is that people definitely get pushed away, but it's actually disproportionately affects women. Women are less likely to apply
Yes.
if they see that than men are. And so that's, in terms of fairness, which is a conversation we've had in a recent episode,
Awesome.
that's actually a big thing. So last time I had to go revamp a job description, I made really sure to take the things that were under must have that shouldn't have been and move them out.
Yep.
And stuff that, was kind of a must have, but you could learn it on the job if you did it quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I just said that. And, that goes a long way to just making it clear, like, these are things you're going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
You must be able to do this. If you can learn this quickly, you're good to go. Yep. And it opens it up to the people that, really what it comes down to is there's this male female disparity, but also there's like a kind of confidence disparity, right? Some people are way overconfident and they'll apply to any job. And then there are people who are not confident. They're not as confident as they should be. And so they look at that and think, wow, I only have 2 years of experience. It needs 3. I can't do it.
And thank you for adding, because there's a little something on that. There's a saying I like to say, and I talk to a lot of my students and our coaching clients about, you ever heard that phrase, fake it till you make it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Too often when it gets like the interview setting and all, and there's a great bit from Gabriel Iglesias on job interview voice. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's super good. But when it comes to that idea of, I'm starting to interview for this, or connections on that, globally it's there. North America, it's here. DC here, it's really there. There's a lot of really confident people out there, specifically in the agile space. I'll have you know. A lot of these folks are all talking no shock. And the thing that people have to realize when you're going, if you actually believe what you're saying, you have to be ready that someone is going to call your bluff.
Mm-hmm.
And in having to do so many interviews over the years, it's like, I tell this from like a sales and capture standpoint. I go, the customers might know more than you. And nothing is more embarrassing or potentially harmful than having your bluff called with an audience. That feels awful. And that can be shattering.
Yeah.
Like it's like really confident, not really. You get a bluff called, you might be like, I'm going to get out of the industry. It's like, no, you bring a lot to there. So you got to be careful on this stuff.
Yeah.
Know your stuff is fine. It's okay to be like, well, yeah, I don't have that, I don't have experience in that. When it's like, oh yeah, it's this. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, yeah, what about this? It's like, I mean,
yeah, I think like flipping the script and kind of asking better questions is the better way to go about things, and just really being more curious, right? I mean, even just like good managers, typically they look for the curious minds, right? Whether you have that skill set or not, I think being willing to and genuinely interested in that role is going to give you a leg up than somebody that's even perhaps worked in that role before, but just done the bare minimum perhaps.
But there's no way to tell that. You got to make a snap call on that. So it's like, I will always go on skill potential. That factor is really big for me. I look for high ceiling. And it's like, for those of you out there who are like, I have high ceiling, it's like, a lot of us have high ceiling, but you have to be able to talk about it where people can see that. Open mind curiosity is part of it, but it's, could this person be a valuable part of the team? Could I see this person as someone who's reliable? And on that, here's some more tactical and practical. People want a job. They want to get in there. What does everybody want? They want to move up. I want a senior in front of my name. I want that. It's like, no, let's call it what it is. You want to be able to make a decision when a project starts, when it's whatever. You want to make some more. Got it. Okay. You need to be reliable, dependable. Are you someone that I can rely on? And I always say people, I say, turn in your assignment. So what does that mean? People want to go for extra credit a lot. Don't go for extra credit until you can at least turn in your assignment. hey, Chris, I came up with this really good idea for a community of practice. We could do this. And yeah, we'll bring in some people and some speakers. And all. Cool. Did you get the thing done that the statement of work asked for? Well, I didn't because I
Do your job first.
do your job. Because like, why would I want to give you something if I know that, again, back to clear definitions of success. If I've said X, Y, and Z, this is what the customer's looking for, X, Y, and Z. You come to me with A, B, and C, and you sloughed off X, Y, and Z, that's how you can get laid off.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to be reliable and dependable.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people. It's like, I'm not going to give you extra credit until you can at least turn in your assignment.
So how do you set boundaries on getting laid off? You're kind of going through this transition. What do you do?
Like as a person who got laid off?
Mhm.
This is different for different people. Some people like to set a timeline. I need a job by. I'm not always a fan of that. We got to feed our families. We got to feed ourselves. There's bills to pay. So sometimes that factors, but giving yourself a little bit of grace is fine. From a boundary standpoint, self-care is important. Like one phrase I tell people, I say, the world will take everything that you will let it. True story. Someone got laid off from one of these places and they were in the transition where it's like, my last day is in a couple weeks and they want me to do this and I have to type up this and type up this. I go, hang on, let me ask you something. Who laid who off? Why are you staying up till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, typing up emails for somebody else who may or may not be doing your job?
Yep.
Take care of yourself. And you don't even have to take that time to
Reflect.
Either reflect, rest, or
Rest.
walk. It's amazing what a full belly and a good night of sleep will do for you. So it's like,
Right.
So setting boundaries for that period. If it's you're laid off, goodbye, that's one thing. You're laid off, you're here for a month. I mean, let's be real, So I would say from a boundary setting, being respectful and loving and caring for yourself, that is a good boundary to do. Being deliberate about what you're going to do is also an important thing where it's like, okay, am I doing something? Like, don't think of it like I need to send out the resume to 10 companies this week. People come up with these self-imposed metrics.
Right.
It's kind of like a New Year's resolution you can't make.
Yeah.
Anybody who's like, I want to read 10 business books in the first month. It's like, calm down. Are you making progress? Yes. Just keep moving forward. Just keep moving forward. Did you spend some time thinking about this? Did you make some progress here? Did you do this? Okay. Hey, are you doing something? A lot of times it's like, okay, I'm doing something, making some progress.
Yeah.
That's good.
So it's like eat your vegetables before you have your dessert, right?
I mean,
Send out a resume, read a book, something before you go play video games.
even that, it's okay. If you want to play video games, that's okay. Cause you got to give yourself a break.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. It's like, give yourself a break. But if I'm just sitting there hanging out and I'm just, fiending on, Lightfall's coming out here soon on Destiny. So I'm saving my time for that. And I can see, it's just giving yourself that grace. Moving forward, feeling like you're at least moving the ball a little bit. That feels good. It's kind of like people on like a weight loss journey.
Yeah.
You're not going to lose a pound every week. Maybe you lose a little bit, maybe you put on a little bit. It's fine. It's long game.
Patient.
Long game. And then the question to ask is there something else that I can do?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've talked to people, they're like, oh, I'm just fed up with this job. So it's just like, well, tell me, like, I ask a lot of questions. I'm like, okay, so what did you do this past week? Let's write it down and look at it. And when it's like hardly did anything, I'm like, okay, so what is this saying to you? And it's like, maybe I could be what's something else you could do? Oh, maybe I could reach out to one of these local communities and like volunteer.
That's what I was gonna. That's what I've done when I had been laid off. What did I do? I took the time to take care of myself and then build, a career path in volunteer work and philanthropy and shift over to something else. And eventually I was able to leverage that on my resume to help me land the new job.
There you go.
Because you're staying busy, you're staying active. And frankly, I think that's a big part of if you're laid off, how do you respond to that? Your employers are paying attention to that.
Absolutely. Well, not just employers. Anyone's paying attention. Anyone. Here's more tactical and practical. This is related. You ever gone to a restaurant and you see somebody not upset, not happy with their order, and then they like get into somebody, like they get into the server or get into you ever seen that?
Chew them out.
Here's the thing. I learned this a long time ago, just not personally, but I got to see it happen. Here's a kid working at like an Applebee's. Yeah, they bring you a glass of water. You're in a huff. You're in a bad mood. Here comes your appetizer. And they go off. The thing is that what not everybody realizes is that your next hire, the person you might hire, or your next customer, they might be at the next table. You are always interviewing. How you carry yourself, that's your whole self.
Yep.
I see someone getting into a waiter, not for nothing, that's going to factor. A friend of mine, we had a candidate come in, and there was a bad situation where somebody had come in, their interview process was good. They came in just to pick up some paperwork. That person was pulled into a impromptu interview. They weren't ready. Wife was in the car. They were like going to the beach. That interview went bad. And so they're like, I no longer want this job. The person who did the impromptu interview was like, I don't want this person. I lit people up. I was like, what in the, I was upset. But a good thing that came out of the conversation is like, no, you are always interviewing. You are always on stage. With the amount of devices and cameras right now, someone's watching you right now.
Agreed.
For those of you who have children, it's like your kids are watching you.
Yeah.
Your friends are watching you.
Yeah.
Your employees are watching you. Your customers are watching you.
Yeah.
How you conduct yourself says a lot. You want to be authentic. Don't get me wrong. You want to be authentic. But I talk to these people who are like, I have no filter. Like, all right. Good luck.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, just transitioning a little bit, you talked a little bit about how you have a blog post up right now with some tacticals on adjusting the resume. Can you give a little tips out right now? I know you shared a little tidbits,
couple of them. Number one, I say take the alphabet soup off. Take the alphabet soup off. The other thing to think about is, what else do you notice when you see a resume? What's one of the first things you see? Contact information, right?
Yeah.
What does that email actually say? Because, I mean, think about it. That's an impression. And let's say I get a resume. I say, oh, name, da, da. And you look at the email, it's like tbone420@hotmail.com. It's like, oh, you know, hey, T-Bone, what's it? It's like, okay, it's like, how long have you had this? But like, what does it say?
Yeah.
It also can say what you value. Imagine if you have, I had a candidate come to me, and so I work a lot in the Agile space, but I grew up as a traditional project and program manager. And in some different places, different things are valued.
Right.
And what you value says a lot to me. The order that you tell me about things says a lot to me. Had a candidate come, he said, Chris, I have a great phone screen, whatever, we talk, and I give him the resume, and then it goes cold. I go, let me look at it. And I looked at it, and his email address was first name, dot, last name, dot, and he named a certification in his email address at gmail.com.
Oh.
So if you're going to an organization that doesn't value that certification, guess what? You end up in the no pile right there. They're not even going to read the rest of it. Likewise on the certification thing. So when people go down, what I like to do, I look at the order that you put some things in. So if I see that you value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and down here at the end is like the last couple things that we do as an org, you to me just said, you don't value that. Things like that. Like there's some tactical and practical, some other things to think about with it.
Oh, while you're thinking on that, there was a story years ago about someone who got registered the email address, I want to work at yahoo.com. Went and applied at Yahoo. And you think they got that job?
Right? You could. I mean, that's a roll of dice. That's risk. You know, you could do that. I'm a big fan of just names. You want it to be something that people can see. You know, that's one thing to consider. Again, on tactical and practical, I'm a big fan on talking about giving a little bit of context about the place that you were at. Like, oh, this was like, I received a wonderful resume review, pretty high dollar, on some things to think about, you know, a couple of years ago, but still pretty applicable. But it's like, what do you want to highlight? Like, do you want to highlight your education, or do you want to highlight this particular service or your skills? This is another thing I mentioned on the skills. People will put all of the skills that they've ever done, like, on their resume, you know, like the big grid of things. And like, I like last year, I was looking at a resume, candidate. I'm looking, I go, let me ask you a question. Do you really want a SQL Server 7.0 job? And they were like, well, not really. I go, well, why are you putting it on here then? Well, I want to show that I can do it. It's like, do you want one of these jobs? Because anything that's on there, they might ask you about.
Yeah.
Do you want a web trends job? Do you want a site server job? Are you looking for Windows NT work? Obviously, I'm dating myself over here. But it's like, but think about it. It's like, is that the job you want? No. Back to, what do you bring to the table? What are you looking for?
Make it simple.
That's how you boil it down, right? To
Keep the highlights that are relevant.
The resume gets you in the door. You're looking for the phone call. It needs to be compelling. Why should somebody look at your resume as opposed to the next one underneath you?
Right.
What do you bring to the table? Everybody is a self-starter, hardworking, blah, blah. You take that word salad. So what? Who are you? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
That's what they want to know too.
Yeah.
That's great advice. So kind of final question here.
Sure.
a lot of companies have recently been laying off agile roles. You're an expert in the agile arena. So what do you make of that?
A couple things. So different organizations are sending people out for a lot of different reasons. And when it comes to agility, and we've talked about this,
Yeah.
organizations that think, oh, this is what agile is. People say, I always say tongue in cheek, the agile. Drives me nuts. The unfortunate thing is organizations have varying ideas of what this is.
Right.
And the challenge that we run into whenever we share these different ways and alternative ways of working is that a lot of them are built on a very different set of values and principles, how we conduct ourselves. One of the questions I like to ask people is I say, are the behaviors that like we could observe, the decisions that we make within an organization, are they consistent with the values and principles that are important to this organization? What are those values and principles? And does everyone have a shared understanding of them? That can apply to any organization. Think of a place that says our employees are our number one customer. You ever heard that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, imagine if they say this is our number one value. And let's say we work there. And let's say it takes you 4 emails, 3 approvals, 5 forms, and a couple phone calls just to get time to go to the dentist for your annual cleaning. There's a dissonance with that. Your employees are your number one customer, but you have to jump through these hoops.
Yeah.
We are not being honest as an organization about what we value. With that in the agile space, if they don't have a true foundation based in this different mindset, making choices, maybe they're not an agile organization. That's okay.
Yeah.
But if an organization views agility as, oh, this is brand new, which is it's not. If it's just, oh, we just kind of sprinkle it in, I always say, okay, how much would you pay somebody who's in the organization for 15 years? A professional of 15 years. Oh, well, these are pay bands and all. Well, why are you paying this role so much less than this one? So when it comes to the agile people, it's like, oh, all you do is kind of like run some meetings. You just open Zoom. We don't need you. And I'm like, okay. I talked to some people who are like, I'm trying to be a scrum master here. And it turns out, guess what? The organization and the candidate don't have an understanding of how that framework is. And that's just one drop in the bucket of all these other ways to work. They think the agility is what it is. You know what everyone thinks it is? Stand-ups and story points. Calm down. Call some people who are actually like classically trained and like licensed by these organizations to share some things with you and ask some real curious questions. If an organization doesn't have a shared understanding of what it is, you're going to find yourself out on the street. So it's like, it's heartbreaking to me when I hear, oh, here are the people in this entire agile component are left off. Well, what does that organization think those people do? Back to the clear definitions of success. Also on the candidate, what do you think it is?
Yeah.
Just calling it out straight what it is. You want to know what agility is to a lot of organizations. They just want traditional project management on a shorter cycle.
Yeah, I've definitely
Yes.
experienced that.
I'm just calling it out right there.
And the word agility, I mean, it is attractive within itself. Everybody wants to be agile. They want to have, move faster, be able to respond to change more efficiently, effectively. But yeah, I mean, the roles of an agile, organization, when it's implemented in organizations, it doesn't have that in mind, that these roles need to exist in that way. They need to be that change agent. They need to be able to really change culture and mindsets continuously as things evolve. Our workflows change as technologies advance. We have new technologies that we use. These changes are difficult to do because it causes a lot of disruption in the current culture of people that are working within, and they tend to resist that culture quite a bit at times. So I'm curious. I mean, how does that come into play when organizations leave or let go of a lot of agile practices in the intent that they are? How are they disenfranchising themselves?
The organization or the people?
Both.
Well, again, it's like you try something on, and if you don't like it, you don't want to do it. Hey, I tried this modified version of Atkins. You remember the Atkins diet? You eat all the fat and the protein, no carb, and you lose weight, right? You know, there's a modified version of Atkins, the one where you eat bread also. You ever heard of this one? Doesn't really work too well. You get fat. I say that jokingly because you don't have to go whole hog, because there are organizations out there that sell this whole idea of agile transformation. It's like, I don't like that word even. It's just, you're doing some work. However we work is okay. Are you okay with it? No. Okay, well, what are the areas that maybe we think we can shore up, and what adjustments do we want to make? Who am I or any other organization to tell some other group how they should work? Who, seriously? Like the hubris for me to walk into a place as awesome as this. You know what you should do? I'm not here. What do I know about that? What I can do is say, hey, here are some alternatives. Here's some options. Be curious and ask some questions.
Mhm.
Are we okay with this? So from a disenfranchised standpoint, if this idea of this role could apply to any role, agile or otherwise, if a particular person's role has been marginalized within an organization, is viewed in a certain way of you're just a party planning committee, then you're going to have limited success, regardless of how it is. Back to what you said earlier, people say they want to be agile. You want to know what organizations really, they don't want to be called not agile. Because in the sales cycle, people go, we want the agile, but we also want the. But a lot of the responses to these contracts are self-inflicted.
Mhm.
A lot of the folks, you talk about up high, no. A lot of time in these organizations, one of our clients, they say, I do not care how you work. I just want to see you. I want to move the needle. I want to do some good. I want to help some people. It's like, I am not telling you what to do. When you get a couple levels down, those people say, oh, they said we have to do this. And it's like, no, I sat in the room with your boss, C-level, who said, you can do whatever you want and I'm investing in this. So that's part of the raw material we have in here. You talk about resistance. It's not even resistance to change or anything like that, because be real, we don't like change. Do I not want the metro to come when it's going to come? Do I want a 3-hour commute or a 1-hour commute? You don't know, coin flip, shout out DC area. We like some kind of patterns in our life, we want to have that kind of, there is some consistency and patterns that we feel good in, but it's like, embrace change. I like to have some stuff settled. That's okay. It's being able to respond to it. Can we do that? Long release cycles.
Right.
Should it take us that long to get something in somebody's hands? So an organization has to be like, who do we want to be? What's important to us? What are our values? Are we actually living these, or are they just lip service?
Right.
Because if it's, let's put like the agile paint job on some things, I tell people, it's like, if you tell people, oh, this is what we do. Yeah. And sales talk. Under the hood, if it's still the same thing, I say that's just agile theater.
Yeah.
And you want to know it, people know it.
Yeah.
And if they don't know it, they're going to equate it with that.
Yeah.
And so that's the dangerous thing. That's an easy way to get disenfranchised.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that disenfranchisement where people have had bad experiences with people performatively doing things like Scrum or Safe.
Anything.
And then they're like, it's a joke. It's a way to waste my time. It's a way to get status reports, all these different things.
Yeah.
Sure.
Whereas when you've been in an organization that's embraced those principles and been able to use them, yeah, it may not exactly match what, say by the book, the Scrum Alliance or whatever says by the book, but you're embracing the principles of continuous learning and adjustment and, feedback cycles and all that kind of stuff, so that you're able to work together in a good way.
Yeah. We're just doing some work.
Absolutely.
A lot of times what happens? Money flows in from somewhere. Someone's asked to do something. Here's something we did for you. All right, cool. Hey, let's do it again. The thing is a lot of times you don't have an agile problem. You have a people problem.
Yeah.
And clear definitions of success, values and principles. Who are we as an organization? What type of person do we want here? And also, what does the organization exist for? This is something we didn't talk about. What are we trying to do? Are we trying to build a company that's going to be along for forever? Are we trying to be acquired in 10 years?
Right.
What is our exit strategy? And it's like, when that is clear to the employees and everybody in the organization, good things can happen. Clarity. It's like, okay. Versus like, I just had a conversation last night where it's like, we've had this contract for an inordinate amount of time, which means guess how you've been working on that contract the same way for the same amount of time you've had the contract.
Yep.
So why you want to change anything? Well, if there's enough money flowing into the right pockets, why would I want to change anything? If I've got that apartment building and I own that whole thing and I always have tenants, why do I want to go ahead and tear it down?
Just business as usual.
It's just business. And this is you got to zoom out a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is, we're a little off topic.
No.
Layoff people.
No, absolutely. And I think, Chris, we want to thank you again for joining us today. I think our listeners probably got a ton of value from all of the advice that you gave, especially for those that have been impacted by the layoffs, but even perhaps for some that are on the other side who are looking to hire, because there is tons of top talent out there.
Absolutely.
So it's great to know. Now, again, can you share with some of our listeners where they can learn a little bit about you, SparkPlug SparkPlug Agility, and how they can get in touch.
Absolutely. So easy to find on LinkedIn. Just Chris Lee, two name, L-I. So if you see him, bald guy, I always joke with people. It's like, you see the guy who looks like The Rock's fat stunt double? That's him. Find him right there. Easy to find out there on social, stuff like that. Our company website is sparkplugagility.com. And the folks who normally find us are looking for one of a couple things. We do a lot of speaking engagements, podcast interviews, MC work, stuff like that. That's one line that we talk about. We do a lot of consulting, where it's like, and we view consulting as actually providing expertise and advice. Like basically, we are trying to help you out, lending our expertise. And this is advice giving. But on the flip side of that, there's coaching. Professional coaching is something we take like really, really, it's so human to us and so purposeful. Coaching is not telling somebody else what to do. It's helping to create that space in a productive partnership. And so like, this is something that used to be on our secret menu for that. You never go to the restaurant. It's on like a secret menu. We're actually now advertising it now. So the clients that we're working with, we're trying to help them achieve their goals. That's what people find. But training is what a lot of people will call for. I'm one of the lucky people that get a chance to certify in a wide variety of things, specifically around Agile related topics. Scrum is something. So for those of you interested in like certified Scrum Master, you may have heard that. Oh, CSM. And then the advancing levels from there. We teach a lot of that stuff. We do custom training. So that's what the phone rings for the most. So if you just stop by sparkplugagility.com, drop us a note. If there's something that you can, you think that we can help with, we'd love to hear from you. It's really, we don't advertise.
Yeah.
It's actually all word of mouth. It's all word of mouth. So we found that the right students, the right clients find us normally because somebody else had a really good experience. And that's kind of just how we work.
I surely found you. And everybody give it up for Chris Lee.
Chris, thanks for coming out. We really enjoyed the conversation. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners did too.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
See you next time.
Thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please hit the subscribe button. We're available on YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, and many other podcast platforms. We're releasing podcasts on a regular basis. You can find out more at ScienceLogic.com/podcast.